On Friday, September 28th, the Norris Group proudly presented its 11th annual award-winning black tie event, I Survived Real Estate. An incredible lineup of industry experts joined Bruce Norris to discuss perplexing industry trends, head-scratching legislation, tech disruption, and opportunities emerging for real estate professionals. All proceeds from the event benefit Make-A-Wish and St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. This event would not have been possible without the generous support of the following platinum partners: the San Diego Creative Real Estate Investors Association, Invest Club, Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club, Think Realty, Wilson Investment Properties, Coach Fullerton, First Lending Solutions, Property Radar, the Apartment Owners Association, MVT Productions, and Realty 411. Visit isurvivedrealestate.com for event information and see Amazon Prime or YouTube for past events.
Could you go look at that same data and predict who was going to buy a home? Well, yeah. If you can, then there's a pretty good chance now you can put AI on doing that at scale.
Just remember when it was so easy, yellow letters, just... And Eddie, one of the reasons I wanted you on the panel is what you've done to the magazine is quite impressive. Think Realty Magazine, the Personal Real Estate Magazine rebrand, and you're doing a lot of video and a lot of radio. I think as a marketer and a PR guy myself, the mix is getting difficult. And when you talk about zero interface, it's feeling more and more like we have 5 influencers. We're going to have to be going through the filter of either Facebook or Microsoft has Cortana, Amazon has Alexa. Are those really the filters that I have to learn to play in? They're not going to be going to websites anymore. Is that some stuff that you're having to think about now?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have 84 companies. And so a lot of the things that we're doing in mass media is to get people to raise their hand or force them into some funnel. Then we're using all these new tools, voice recognition on Facebook. Now you begin to say a product and we can serve you the product and you're going, how did they know that I just said that? Well, because of the machine learning that has AI attached to it. And so for us, it's getting fundamentally harder to get them to take action, but not to find out who they are, right? Like we're finding it easier to find out who is going to potentially sell their home in the next 6 months. We're finding it easier to find out who is going to purchase a car in the next 3 months. Getting them to actually take that journey with you because of consumer trust is a totally different conversation.
I think there's a lot of opportunity because of what you just said and when brand. So I sort of made the joke about yellowletters.com, but I think most people that get yellow letters now are sort of laughing a little bit like that's adorable and toss. You're competing against my big concern with artificial intelligence for the last 2 years, Marnie, you don't know this. Zillow was here talking about how there's no intent of us getting into the iBuyer space. Something changed this year, but here's why I was concerned. They have the largest eyeballs right now of consumers that are doing their Zestimate and search on their platform. They'd know before anybody else because they have the data. For those of us in the room, what do we have as consumers? You get the point, but I guess will regular realtors and the investors in the room have something to compete with some of these big iBuyers? That's what I want to know.
Take that.
Yeah, I think one of the things you have to think about is these iBuyers, they're just it's a pretty small step, right? How many essentially iBuyers do we have in this room? They're just house flippers, right? They're just taking it a step bigger in scale. It's not like self-driving cars or some of these other things, right? I think in my mind it's a fairly small step, right? If we're going to take a step in housing, I would like to see maybe a much, much bigger step than somebody's going to buy and flip the house. I can imagine, maybe with blockchain, which is a fractionalized home where maybe I'm buying the right to live in the home and you're buying the right to have the home's appreciation and you're buying the right to some of the income, right? And, like completely different models or perhaps a bunch of us pull together and we're going to all homes together. But if I decide I want to move, right? I just move into this other home and somebody moves into my home and there is no transaction at all. Like, that will be fundamentally different. The iBuyers, I think they'll certainly play a role, just like when we send out postcards and people go, I want to sell my house with cash and leave the tenant in it. They play a role. It's not going to be every transaction.
Well, since we're on the subject, let's go to iBuyers. Marnie, what changed in the last year? Why did Zillow decide to jump in?
So 2 years ago, I do know that was said. I'm very good friends with Nick Bailey, who sat on the stage.
He was on the radio show before the show. We're still very good friends.
If anybody knows him. I guess, first of all, you never say never, right? What we found, obviously, a couple points here. With Zillow, obviously, we have hundreds of thousands of agents. We make our money because they come and they advertise with us and they buy leads. What we found is these agents would come buy these leads, and 46% of them would go unanswered. 46%. So agents would come pay us their money, we would give them leads, and they would not respond to them, which is crazy. That's just crazy. So that was one, that we're looking at this consumer experience, and it's not great, right? Because that's their first interaction. It's not great. Two, we found that sellers were coming in and they wanted something easier. And we actually just, good timing, yesterday issued our Zillow consumer report. So if anybody wants to see that, you can just go to zillow.com/report and it will pull it up and it will give you a lot of good trends and analysis and information there. But we found that these sellers in the market, that 39% of them will choose timing over profit and money to sell their home, and that they needed a faster process. But when you went out there and you looked at like Open Door and you looked at OfferPad, we thought that there was a more industry-friendly way to do it, and so we decided that we're going to go into it and we're going to bring an agent into the mix, because we do believe that an agent is going to always be a part of the process, and that's the best way to do it, to really create the best consumer experience.
Now, I've heard a rumor that I've heard some iBuyers have had conversations with some large flipping companies that they don't have any intent of going after heavy fixers, hoarder houses. That's probably not the mix. This is open for anybody. Have you heard the formula? Is this really, we're going to buy light fixers where we can de-junk it, paint carpet, and get it out the door? Is that the goal?
Well, from our model, of course, that's part of it. I mean, typically on the markets, we're only in a few markets right now, 4 or 5 markets. We look at the medium average price and then take maybe plus or minus 20% is kind of a framework. And then, of course, there's some other elements. I think Bruce was saying that when he was talking earlier that we don't buy homes behind gates yet, gated homes. That might be a part of the process as well. There's lots of factors.
Okay.
Aaron,
sure, please.
Yeah, so I met with the Zillow rep there in the southeast, where they're purchasing most of the properties in Atlanta, and their box seemed to be shifting a little, and it also seemed like maybe there was a little bit of a beta test that was going on, as well. Like maybe somewhere between 75 and 100 homes were being purchased. I know that we sold a few of them to them. And the box was radically different from one to the next. They were looking at some with equity, some with potential growth opportunities. They were looking at 3 beds and 4 beds, and so it seemed like they're still in that test case scenario. Absolutely. Where they're buying a variety to now watch how they perform. Yeah,
Eddie's very right. We are a big company of testing and trying things out. We obviously tested the Phoenix market for a really long time before we went in then to Vegas, and then Atlanta and Denver are the other markets out there too. So I would have to agree. I don't think that it's going to be everything. I think it's going to be a niche kind of market, and there's always going to be somebody who wants that sell side to be a little bit easier and more efficient than it is today. But I don't think that it's necessarily going to take over everything as they said.
I was at a Think Realty conference, and I was really surprised. I asked the question, there's a lot of Wall Street companies currently in the private money space. And I asked the question of a hard money panel that included the software provider that gets access and sees a lot of lenders. I've asked this question twice, one at the California Mortgage Association and then once at your event. I asked the question, if we hit a recession, how many of them would be left? He said 85% would be gone. So on the table right now, we have some pretty big companies. Some of them have already hit, in the iBuyer space, unicorn status, like I'm calling it $2 billion. So Google Instant Offers, Open Door, OfferPad, Knock, Redfin, Bungalow, that's first I had heard of them. Realogy and Keller Williams snuck in this week, and they have already tested 100. So does this iBuyer model work in a year like 2008 to 2010?
So, I think where this really started was in not 2008, but 2009 and really 2010 with folks like Waypoint that realized, wow, we can buy these houses up and rent them out at a 7 cap. And let's figure out how to get the institutional knowledge around how to go after this market. And so at the end of the day, and they came in strong, and in a lot of areas really quickly brought prices back up, as they said, because maybe prices were at a 10 cap and they'd buy at a 7 cap, and they just pushed them up. So, what it really comes down to is whether or not there's still a return. And that's really, it's very simple. If there's a return in the market to be had, they'll still be there. So I think, it's then becomes a question of how bad, right? If it's a 2008-like, and prices are still going down, no, they probably stay out until it flattens and comes back in, and then they probably come back in really strong, right? So, but it's just it's a math. The thing about the institutional players is it's math. It's not emotion, it's not other things, it's math. If there's a return there, they're gonna be there and take it.
And they all have slightly different models, obviously. So Zillow is working in the agent angle.
Yeah, and I think, though, if you look at just recently announced this week, obviously Coldwell Banker with Realogy, and then Keller Williams has been testing this as well. I mean, if you're looking from two very large public companies, Zillow and Realogy, if they're kind of jumping this space, and we see a shift in the market coming eventually, the model's going to sustain itself in some way. I think the important thing is, though, is if you look at the shift of the market, back in 2008 and 2009, so forth, it wasn't like a cliff that dropped off, right? It just slowly kind of goes there. So it gives iBuyers and these different models, a little bit of chance to kind of play and test with the models a little bit. So.
It was really ugly in California.
Oh, yeah, a little bit more so than maybe some other areas.
We we may have already talked about this, but we had somebody come to our office in Kansas City in the past couple of weeks that is going to broker the $1 billion fund that Amazon just put together to put into the private lending space. And so we're seeing Amazon that now is trying, and I asked a fundamental question, and the fundamental question was, why are you getting into this space, and why now, right? And the answer is we have capital we need to put to work. And so I think that right now, with all the rate compression and things like that are happening in the private lending sector, they're also experiencing less of a yield. And there's so much capital available on the market today. And so the big difference to me, and maybe why they wouldn't, I don't even think they would get into the marketplace in 2008, 2009, 2010, and that is because the capital they have today is radically different than what they had back then. And I think today it's trying to find a way. And so I think there's two things. I think, number one, they're looking for yield. Number two, the technology is dictating where they're starting to find that yield. And so Amazon came to us. I sat in the car on the way over with your dad and asked him a bunch of questions about private lending. And I'm always amazed at his knowledge base and how he parses down a deal. How he parses down a deal is radically different than how the guy that was representing Amazon's $1 billion parses a deal. And in his questioning, he was hoping for 6 or 7 percent, and hoping that the deals over the span of $1 billion are going to yield that, knowing that some of them are going to be very bad deals and some of them are going to be very great deals. And again, it's a math equation that they're running a spread. And so it's a really tough question to answer whether they would be there or not be there or still be in existence, because I think that we're just in such a different marketplace, it's mandating their place in it.
When you told me that about them getting into the space, I immediately thought of what other verticals could these iBuyers possibly get in. I'm like, maybe Lowe's will get in it, and they'll buy the house, they'll fix it up and feature all Lowe's, so basically everybody's walking through like a Lowe's commercial. Or like, what if Wayfair? All of a sudden they're buying houses and furnishing them. I'm sort of joking, but I'm sort of like, there's a lot of different opportunities and ways to make money. Sure. When real estate changes hands, a lot of money gets spent in different areas. So,
well, I think one thing everybody in this room needs to keep in mind, right, is these iBuyers are just folks that went one day, oh, I think maybe we'll start to buy houses. But they went and got institutional capital, right? So why isn't there, for example, if you're a C21 or any of these big things, why wouldn't you give every one of your agents a tool so that when they're out there talking to the folks about taking their listing, they say, oh, by the way, if you'd rather, we'll just buy the house on any day you want for this price, but I think I can list it for this price. That should just be part of the standard, sales pitch and offer, and I think that will likely happen.
With these big trusted brands too, I think they're going to do what CarMax did for the real estate industry, for the car industry, but now you've got a ton of them playing at the same time. Very well-respected brands. It'll be interesting to see how it works out. I definitely have to make time to talk about 3D printing in the module space. Amazon came out. Apparently they love the Inland Empire. They invested in Rialto-based Plant Prefab, so spent a lot of money with them, well-timed with the accessory dwelling unit conversation going here in California. We had an event a couple weeks ago, and I was surprised how much work it took, but I got to interview Senator Bob Wachowski, who is the senator that is driving the conversation about ADUs in California. If not familiar with it, anybody with a single-family or multifamily home, and it's going to get more industry come December and January because they are not done regulating it yet, you should be able to build a granny flat in the back of your property. Depending on the city, the state basically forced everybody's hand and said, it doesn't matter, after January 1st, 2017, whatever you wrote ordinance-wise before doesn't count, we need your new ordinance. A large majority of the cities did not respond, and I don't think they've been very happy, so they started layering on ways to make money, and the state said, no, and it sounds like they're going to do it again. So it's very well played by Amazon, but 3D printing, what does that mean when you can build something for under $10,000 in 24 hours? It took me $150,000 to build it, and I bought my lot for $100,000, and let's just call this the high desert. And somebody's able to do that and replicate it for so much less. What does that do for the price of real estate?
Yeah, so it's been 100 years since the 110 years since the Sears Modern Home catalog, hit the streets, and and that dramatically lowered. If you look at that, Case-Shiller chart, like that starts in the 1800s and has this big drop at 1910. That was why, even 20 years later in 1929, you could buy a home out of the catalog for $1,000 to $4,400, which today would be $15,000 to $65,000. And it's been 100 years, since we've had that kind of major technological shift, right? And they did that by kitting these homes and pre-cutting the lumber and all of this and shipping it in boxcars, right? This is 1908, right? So it's crazy, but I think we're way, way overdue for that to happen again. I think 3D printing is one of the things that the company you mentioned, Plant, they're doing factory-built homes.
Modular,
it's not
correct,
3D
yeah.
printing. So I should, if everything goes well with underwriting laboratories is actually playing in this space. I should have one of the first 10 3D printed permitted homes in California by this time next year. So I'm excited about that. It's a guest house, but still. And stealth company, and I begged them to A, talk to you, and B, let me tell you about them here, but they're still stealth and they're in San Francisco, but it's happening.
I tried. They have a video. I'm like, what's your name? They're like, we can't tell you till 2019. They said they're going to come out in 2019. So, but we only have about 5 minutes left. I want to understand where it's going to get stuck. It's good timing because if it happens soon with the ADU conversation, politically, they just want housing and they want it affordable, and that will do it, especially if it's just ADUs and not whole homes. But I can imagine the unions and the jobs that this is going to upset. I can see a lot of people being very upset that this technology is going to roll out. Where is it going to get stuck?
I think that obviously, at the city level, they don't understand it, right? So, I mean, they're going to highly regulate it. They don't understand it. I think just the opposite. We have a major job, construction shortage. These skilled laborers, we can't find them, and so we're actually looking at. I have a TV studio in Atlanta, and we're actually looking at this because of the high density quality of the printed material for all the soundproofing qualities. But the real reason is because we couldn't find a qualified commercial builder that far north of Atlanta that was willing to come up and work with us, So I think it's going to help. Even the situation out.
I'm excited about it. Do you think 2019 will be the year we start hearing more about, because they've already been doing it for the last 2 years in the Ukraine and Icon, the 600 square foot, Mike Cantu, I don't think he's here tonight. He was very excited about this. He sent it to me. I'm like, I know I've been watching this for years, but nothing stateside. Why?
Well, again, a lot of that, and it was really interesting to me that underwriting laboratories and some of these other things are starting to get involved to try to solve that. Because how do you, the building code, right? How do you just change that so dramatically? So that is where the biggest challenge is the building code and the rest. Structural, what's going to be the where? Is this thing going to fall apart? What happens with the sun hitting it after 10 years? There's still a lot of questions around all of that. So it's going to take a while. We're going to see the first ones next year, I hope, maybe in my yard. And then I think we'll see a lot more. Longer term, right, I think the bigger impact is that it potentially replaces our entire housing stock. Because think about what it does for design. Think about the Guggenheim, in New York, and, the kind of very different design. It doesn't have to be square walls and the rest. And so it really changes everything. And, we may end up like Japan where, houses are worthless after 15 years. The land's worth a lot, but the house itself is worthless after 15 years. And on average, they're replaced every 30. So I don't think there's going to be a jobs problem. I think what we'll do is we'll start tearing down and replacing houses like we tear down and replace kitchens or bathrooms.
Wow. Okay. Well, we have to end. Let's go down the line and just talk about, real quick, in 2019, maybe some of the technology you're most excited about.
Ooh, 2019 technology most excited about. I have to go on the AI plane there. I think it's going to be much bigger than people even think. I don't know or if anyone saw the Google just announced their assistant who made the haircut appointment.
Oh yeah,
with total,
Duplex.
Yeah,
Google
Duplex
Duplex.
with total natural language. She sounds like an assistant, and they're like, "Well, how about Saturday at 1 p.m.?" She's like, "That might not work." And it's complete. Yeah, it is really amazing. I think that's going to become pretty cool.
So interesting enough, our largest business is an insurance company. And if we can actually introduce AI correctly, then I don't have to sit there by the hour listening to actuarial science on where we're going. It'll just automate. We'll get the data fed in. We'll make our choices. But for sure, AI, especially in our business, interacting with our consumer base better.
I think, in the next year, because of the ADU push, because of the affordable housing push, because of the lack of construction workers and the rest, I do think we'll finally start to see quite a bit happening, not even just around 3D printed homes, but more like bringing CNC and automation in the factory, so the factory-built homes, plant-built homes, catalog homes, back to the Sears Modern Home in the 1908. I think we're going to see a lot happen there. Around affordable housing, ADUs, and other interesting stuff like cross-laminated timber, which can take beetle kill, right, wood and turn it into awesome structural material that's very cost-effective and happens to be a carbon store. So wood is a carbon store, and you use it in a structure, you're permanently storing carbon, so it's good for the environment. There's like all kinds of really interesting things happening right now in the construction space that's not construction as we know it.
Well, this is setting up for the next segment. We are taking our first break for tonight. The only break we're going to have tonight. We'll be back at 9 o'clock. Enjoy coffee and dessert, and we'll see you then. Hey everybody, it's Aaron Norris with the Norris Group. You are not going to want to miss our final event for 2018. It's our Cutting Edge Financial Tactics Brunch coming up October 27th in Costa Mesa, California. Last year was so successful, we brought them all back for another session. We all get tired of hearing, talk to your CPA, talk to your attorney. Well, what if you put them all on stage, beating up some of the most advanced questions you've got as a real estate investor? Well, that's what we did. So this year, if you're going to participate, we ask that you watch the entire show from last year on Amazon Prime. So this year, we can cover more difficult topics. Our guests include Karin Hall with UDirect IRA, Bill Exeter with Exeter 1031 Exchange, Amanda Hahn and Matt McFarland with Keystone CPA, and Harry Barth with Barth Calderon Attorneys. We'll hope to see you there October 27th in Costa Mesa.
The Norris Group would like to thank its gold sponsors for supporting I Survived Real Estate. Coldwell Banker Town and Country, Guaranteed Rate, and Nathan Chapoya. In a Day Development, Inland Valley Association of Realtors, Jason Thorman with Coldwell Banker, Jennifer Buys Houses, Keystone CPA, LA South RIA, Las Brisas Escrow, Michael Ryan and Associates, New Western, NorCal RIA, NSD REI, Orange County Real Estate Investors, The Outspoken Investor, Pacific Premier Bank, Pasadena Phoebe, Pilot Limousine, Real Wealth Network, Rick and Leanne Rossiter, SJREI, Spinnaker Loans, South OC RIA, Tri-County Association of Realtors, U-Direct IRA Services, White House Catering. Visit iSurvivedRealEstate.com for event information.